The activity of doing the process analysis is pretty straightforward. We're using the same spreadsheet where before you input the objectives and did the process evaluation, and where the charts were that we took a look at earlier on. We're now moving on to the Project Analysis tab, and in that tab you're going to key in your major initiatives across the top. There's space in the spreadsheet for just 12. We need you to keep it simple. Now, what you're going to do is take a look at each strategic objective and ask yourself, each strategic initiative, and ask yourself what is the impact of that initiative on closing the observed performance gap around that strategic objective. And the scaling is high, medium, or low. If you take a look further down the spreadsheet, you'll see the documentation exists on what that scale should mean to your team. So for each one, you're going to classify what you thought the impact is. And if there is no impact, so for example, the strategic compensation project is not going to impact us getting more customers or fewer planes. But the strategic compensation may have an impact on lower ticket price because we're not going to pay for performance, not on-time flights, not reduced time, but it will have an impact on focus on redesign. So the net is, with the team, you're going to work through each of these. Now, where this is slightly different than the process work that we did before is with the processes, everyone is in contact with them, and so everyone has a good opinion about how well that process is working. In this case, only a few people know the gory details of each of these projects or initiatives, the project leader, the sponsor, maybe some senior people on the team. And therefore, we should be relying more on those fewer people to give us that score than the general population. So through the magic of technology, we've now filled in all of the scores on project impact against strategic objectives. So if we go to the Analysis Chart tab, we then begin to see the charts that we've talked about before. Now, in this case, when we take a look at the top chart, again, the gold bar represents the process performance gaps that we observed earlier on. Again, they come from these charts here, the process performance gaps. And the red dots are taking a look at the impact of those projects as have come from adding up these scores horizontally. Now, it's important to note that these are on two different scales. The yellow gold bars are relative to the other gold bars, and the red dots are relative to the other red dots. And effectively, the yellow gold bars are charted against this left axis and the red dots on the right axis. Now, we've taken the axis off because the strategy points are actually confusing to the reader, we've learned. Just understand this. For example, these two objectives, F2, more passengers, and I1, reduced turnaround time, have gaps which are roughly the same. Right? The gold bars are kind of the same height. Yet there's way more project investment here compared to over here. So the message here is maybe we're under allocating project focus here. Bigger issues occur over here, for example, on improved profitability. There's a lot of projects which are contributing to that, yet there's no specific gap or low ticket price and so forth. So this is merely trying to engage the organization in a conversation about the relative alignment of project focus. The second chart that's generated allows us to take a look at the projects which are listed down the bottom here and begin seeing the relative impact of those projects. Again, it's a relative score, but what we can see is the project of e-learning is going to contribute significantly more than, for example, the strategic compensation project. Now, if you want, you can hand draw on a relative investment of dollars or FTEs for each of these projects to understand investment and return and give you an idea of strategic return on investment. In either case, this begins allowing leadership team to have a conversation about the strategic alignment between projects and the gap that we observed before and return on invested dollars. Obviously, you might want to begin doing some scenario planning where you can go back and propose other projects and begin to see if other projects are going to give you better traction on the strategy, or are there some projects that we should throttle back on because they're impacting objectives that don't seem to have a gap any longer. In fact, in our average client, we discover that between 40 and 60% of the projects go away because we discover that they're not helping close the new and current strategic performance gaps.